It was an interesting moment, isn't it, at the end of a conference. It sort of feels like Cinderella's about to hear the midnight chimes and the carriage is about to turn back into a pumpkin and we're about to leave Neverland, or Alice is about to go back through the looking glass. A good conference is one where you feel safe, you feel seen, and you've had an opportunity to think openly and think freely and to explore things, and just for a brief moment, just leave the everyday behind you, just to leave that operational routine and that inbox just to one side, and have a chance, a bit of a liminal space to think about the possible. And when that can be done in an environment where you are supported and you can trust those around you, and it's staged and choreographed in a way that facilitates those conversations, then we can do remarkable things together. And I think that's my sense over these last 2 days. This isn't just any event. This isn't just any conference. We'll look back on these last 2 days in years to come and say, that was the moment. That was the moment we found our voice. That was the moment we came together. That was the moment that we made something substantive, that we built the evidence, the data set, and collectively and persuasively we made that compelling case. And you were there. And you were there, and you've been part of it. So maybe some thoughts and some thanks before we close. Goodness, 220 people, 20 million, 16 projects, foundation projects, discovery projects, COVID projects, other forms of consultancy, interactive displays, workshops, panel discussions, keynotes, an extraordinary ensemble of activity. You can hopefully see through those five incredible discovery projects the care and thought that went into staging those in a way that meant that they tessellated, that they made sense together, that these weren't siloed indulgences and moments of just esoteric intellectual imagining. No. These were strategic, focused work where together they would help us to make a thoughtful case about the infrastructure, the standards, the workflows, the cultural assumptions, the skill sets, the systems and processes that would all need to be the constituent parts of this new future together. The way that our heritage, our stories, helped us to think about community-generated content, helped us to think about and confront the fact that our collections don't just sit in our stores, that the expertise doesn't just sit in our building and within our workforce, and that content every day is being generated in the real world. And what does that mean when that 19th, 18th century European model of a storehouse aggregating and keeping everything, when that gets flipped and queered and rethought in the 21st century, when expertise comes in many forms, in many places, and those collections are distributed just as that expertise is distributed. Sloan Lab, confronting, square on, difficult histories that need to be confronted. Seeing within those collections the prejudice, the bias, the colonial imperial past, and laying that out, and in fact interrogating it even more and confronting it. But doing so in a way that generously shows the ways in which our collections and some of our biggest collections in the country can be connected. The way Congruence Engine is helping us not only to reach for the new toolbox of artificial intelligence and large language models and to see how that will transform the way that we can approach data and dialogue with data, but at the same time so beautifully and creatively holding up an imaginative lens to show how we can build stories and we can build narratives now across those collections with these new semantic and friend of a friend associations and alignments that we can find within those data sets. Goodness me, transforming collections. Not just helping us to see the role that creative practice, artistic practice, imagination can have within these conversations that can all too easily default to data science. But importantly, holding the line on the questions we must have as we datify culture to understand the culture of data and to understand the risk of perpetuating the injustices that are baked into those taxonomies and classifications and categories and forms of ownership and exclusion and silence that are there in our collections. And for that, we thank everyone on that team. And what Unpath Waters has done to help us to think about a new set of objects, a new set of media formats, a new set of locations where heritage can be. The shipwreck, the cultural object that we'll never see, that we won't ever access, that doesn't sit on a pedestal or a display case in a gallery, but is complex and living and changing and presents us with whole new questions over ownership and interpretation and conservation. Unpath Waters helping us to understand new data, transforming collections, making us quite rightly confront the decolonization of data. The Congruence Engine helping us to think about storified and linked data, Sloan Lab, connected data, and the social data of our heritage and our stories. It does leave us, though, and it's important now to own this space, with a set of questions that are unresolved and some debates that we must continue to have. Some of them we knew. We knew data sharing, we knew GDPR, we knew about what would happen if suddenly we start connecting our collections and we allow our data to go across the boundaries of our organization and into different areas. It's exciting to think about, the fluid interchange and the liquidity and aqueous data that can flow in so many different ways. But what are the legal consequences of that? And do we have those agreements and those licenses and the jurisdiction in place to understand fully what that means? Sometimes in the last 2 days, we heard those moments where sometimes that reassurance isn't always there. We need to understand that more. We have to keep talking about the environment. We have to keep talking about the ecological consequences of all of this. It can't just be in parentheses. It can't just be a footnote that allows us to then carry on with the rest of the conversation. In a moment of climate emergency, where the world's resources are being used, and a moment of extraction and pollution, where future heritage is threatened, it is beholden on us to continue to put these questions of sustainability front and center. As are our questions around another form of extraction, and we're grateful to the panels today that have helped us so well to see this. The extraction of human labor. We heard it again in the sessions this afternoon in our panel discussion. If we're reliant upon a community of practice, a community of action, and to diversify and widen participation within all of this work, and to recognize the expertise that sits within so many different communities of expertise around us, how does remuneration work? How does respect for that labor work? And whilst we're at it, how about us noticing the hidden labor, the gendered labor, the distributed labor that goes on around digital that we haven't given enough attention to? So as we keep thinking about technological change and business change, let's also remind ourselves about that other absolutely essential element to digital transformation and building digital infrastructures, and that's people. Caring for people, showing trust, respect, and empathy. I know it will come down to money. I know it will come down to resource. I know it will come down to planning. And I know it will come down to ingenuity and invention with data science. But it ultimately will come down to human beings, you feeling motivated and supported and able to fulfill this change. We have seen in the last hour in our final panel discussion why this is an extraordinary opportunity. For those of us that have been on this journey for 25 years or more, we can see that it has never had these constituent parts before. We do have a new digital ecosystem around us that is expansive, that is lean, that is thoughtful, that is being supported, that is more connected than we've ever seen in this country up until now in the digital cultural space. Think about the communities that we've built on Tank, but look adjacently. Look who's to our side. Look at our other allies that AHRC have brought together. Think about those incredible projects, 31 projects that are now part of the Riches infrastructure that the AHRC have put in place. Let's see what Helen Hardy and others will do with Disco and how we can be part of that and connect on that and help them with that, but also benefit from that £155 million investment over the next 10 years and how that will help all of our sector. Let's continue to be inspired by and learn from Living with Machines and everything that the British Library did in that extraordinary project, and what the lean, enabling power of the Museum Data Service will also do. There, supporting all of these projects going forward, connecting all of those collections in all accredited museums across the country. Fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable data for the sector. That's how we will, together, move towards not just a national collection, but towards that equitable, sustainable, cultural heritage landscape of connected collections and data. Christopher Smith said it. He said, "This is our opportunity to advocate and shout widely and loudly about everything that's possible." Let's go and let's step into tomorrow. Thank you very much. In our last minute, a very important moment to thank. This is the credits rolling moment. For a conference like this to be delivered, you need an extraordinary team, and the national treasure that is Rebecca Bailey needs to be thanked again, but also Javier, Sophie, Michelle, and Tertia, who have been doing so many things in front of you and behind the scenes and ensure that all of you made your way here. The AHRC team as well, Karen, Amelia, David, Isabel, thank you so much for being here and for everything you've done to bring us to this point. Sagita Media for the live streaming, which has been sensational, and it's been wonderful to know that this event could be hybrid and could enable those that couldn't be present with us today to contribute. And I know there were moments where there were 200 people plus joining us online and offering their insight and support. We are, of course, grateful to Contact Theatre for this wonderful, wonderful venue. ARMR for the Caribbean catering, which was delicious. And thank you to the Whitworth as well for last night's reception and that joyous, wonderful, inspiring gallery. Finally, we are grateful to everyone that's been part of Towards a National Collection, everyone that's been part of the projects you've heard about today, but also the foundation projects, those 8 original projects that helped us to get our compass bearings and to see the art of the possible. The projects that step forward at pace and with skill and with care and sensitivity as part of the COVID-19 projects as well. We thank all of you. And all of you that were involved in the keynotes, the workshops, the panels, the interactive displays over the last 2 days, thank you so much. We saw you and we were so grateful for everything you contributed. I particularly want to thank the Tank Steering Committee. I was on it from the beginning. It's been a long journey, and thank you to everybody who over many months and years continued to contribute their expertise, their experience and knowledge, and their kindness to ensure that committee was always a convivial and effective place to work. And a special thank you to Sir Rowley Keating for his skillful chairing over many years. Rowley, thank you so much. Finally, we're going to thank Christopher, we're going to thank Alan, and we're going to thank Tao. We've got your back. We know you've got ours. We are grateful for everything you do every single day to champion and support all of this. We see you, and we are there for the next step. And finally, I'm grateful to the UKRI and AHRC for their funding, and I will thank them in advance for future funding heading our way. let's step into tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.